I want to learn more about the general history of Lyra before the creation of the human species. For starters, was it the feline species that was the first to inhabit Lyra?
If you're speaking about a conscious intelligence, yes. But we are not originally in the form that you might consider feline.
I see. So was Lyra the location where the felines first arrived in this universe, similar to the way the Draconis system is where the reptilians first arrived in this universe?
You could say so. Again, in the physical form of incarnating as felines, yes.
Uh, did the felines, or the precursors to the felines, arrive in this universe around the same time as the reptilians?
Yes, pretty much exactly the same time, but not necessarily the same time there was incarnation in physical form. It's just we came together at the same what you consider time.
I see. Now, as I'm sure you know, Lyra and the Draco star systems are neighbors, despite their inhabitants being the exact polar opposites. Was this planned by the beings who created this universe, and if so, do you know why?
We agreed to this as well as the reptiles, as our main point was to incarnate in the vicinity where we would, after we venture out, more or less meet each other or rather our offspring in terms of reptiles and humans would. And then they would be confronted with the polar opposite. It was just an easy task. It was obviously not going to work out in the first place, at least the time frame you're asking from right now. There were several tries, different tries, but originally it was seen as supposed to be the easier route.
I see.
Mm.
Now, can you tell me what the relations between the inhabitants of Lyra and Draco were like before the creation of the humans? I mean, were they friends or at least peaceful?
We were somewhat peaceful because there was not much connection at all. The creation of the humans, though, was considered something like a breach or even mistake.
Right, okay. Um, can you describe in general what Lyra was like before the war? For example, what did its planets and cities look like?
Oh, it was a pristine condition. It was beautiful. There was not maybe what you consider high tech, but there was at least still some higher advanced settlements. The atmosphere was rather serene. There was also more pacifist attitude perhaps among members, or like, maybe that's the wrong term, peaceful at least. And
Um, so what were the felines? Um, the felines and the humans. What were they interested in doing with their lives before the war?
simply building upon each other, supporting each other, prosperity, art, culture, science, those topics we have a forefront of interest. Obviously, also just enjoying their existence. Reproduction was at this particular time so an important topic to keep the life form sustainable. So
Right.
therefore also food and agriculture to some degree.
Um, can you tell me how many planets in Lyra were populated by felines and humans?
Well, we believe they were originally just two, but they became more up to six.
Okay. Was Vega the main sort of capital star of Lyra?
You could say so, yes.
Um,
There was also one planet around the star that was mostly populated with felines, later humans.
I see. Now, when the humans were first created, was there just one race, or were there also ones we have today, like, so-called whites and blacks and Asians and blue people, for lack of better terms?
There were numerous blood strains, but there are also many more that you might consider completely foreign to your planet, even not even human by your own definition, simply humanoid, with perhaps skull shapes or even vestigial wings or tails and other appendages that you would consider completely untypical from the human form, were so considered human, that were created at this particular point in time as being a manifestation of the human species, as well as some of them more feline, that perhaps feline humanoid, etc., what you might consider.
I see. So what did the humans do after they were created? I mean, did they live side by side with the felines, or did they have their own cities and their own planets?
They lived first and foremost side by side. Bloodstreams was most common, perhaps those that you would consider European or Asian today. Those were plentiful that ventured off later on other star systems after most of the catastrophe that happened, and they had to find a new home.
Okay. Roughly how much time passed between when the humans were created and the war started?
It was from our counting of time almost instant, but it could have been thousands of years in between.
Okay. Was the Galactic Federation created before or after the creation of humans?
After the creation, but however it was already in the plan, so to speak, in the higher scheme of things, but after we incarnated all, we no longer knew exactly what was the plan. We just had to go along with what happens when you incarnate in the lower dimension, which is a loss of memory, and therefore it was created afterwards.
I see. Okay, now I know the Draconian Empire and the Federation both sort of blame each other for the start of the Orion Wars, and I plan to ask KALASK for their perspective as well, but can you share the Federation's perspective on what exactly triggered the start of the war?
In general, mistrust of the reptilian species particularly. And I don't like to take sides in this conflict. Obviously, I'm looking at it from a biased perspective that reptiles consider human existence something to be wrong, which humans picked up on, which is why there was no trust established. There was also some type of trade deal gone wrong, so to speak. Malicious intent was assumed. I'm not exactly sure if it was present already or if it was a conflict that emerged which then brought it about. It was just in general a different outlook on life and the existence in the universe and what is the correct idea. Yes, if you always have different people with different ideas, how what's right and what's wrong in their very core and inner being, they just radiate. They can start a ball brawl, for example, over a minute, unimportant detail like somebody accidentally bumps into another person, even though it obviously is not for that reason, but because general energy in the vicinity is one of hostility.
Right. So what happened the day the war started? I mean, did the Draconians just send a fleet of ships to attack the cities in Lyra, or what?
They first sent in their own peoples to infiltrate the society and live with them peacefully. We were never quite sure what exactly their intention was, if it was originally one of intention to conquer and destroy, or if it was just a plot or a scheme that came up along while they were living there and thought this is a viable option. So at one particular point in time, after they had gathered enough intel about the people living there, they decided to carry out a full-scale attack while those people that were already living among Lyrans helped the invading forces, much to the dismay of those that were locked on the planet in the aftermath.
Right.
This is a method they have since then perfected and used on many other planets.
I see. So did the felines and humans have their own militaries and warships and that they used to fight back with?
Originally not, they just learned how to construct them later.
I see. Now, I know there was at least one planet in Lyra that was blown up. Did this happen right at the beginning of the war or later on?
It finally devastated the Lyran system to the degree that human life, at least in some areas and squadrons, would become entirely impossible. First, there's skirmishes that took place before there was a full-scale planetary attack.
I
There
see.
were also weaponry employed you might not be familiar with from your world.
Um, so how many planets in total were blown up during the war in Lyra?
Depends greatly on the timeline, as some planets are blown up in one timeline and not in the other. It also depends on how far you take the definition of a Lyran War, as many fled to other systems were followed there, and there was also conflict going on over there, spread like a wildfire throughout the cosmos. There were at least 2 planets were blown up in the process directly around Lyra. Likely 3.
I see.
But again, it
So,
depends greatly on the timeline.
right, right. So in general, what happened to the civilizations in Lyra during the war here? I mean, were any of them able to fight off the Draconians, or did they all just have to migrate to other star systems?
Most of them had to migrate at this point. None of other attacks, none systems, they were some already more durable, but originally the attack was one that came completely unexpected, and everybody was happy if they even survived.
So where did they migrate to?
Numerous systems like Pleiades, Sirius, Orion, obviously. Can see
Uh,
Empire later on, but mostly those 3.
okay. Roughly how long did the war in Lyra last?
The whole idea of asking what time frames is malleable and unstructured, but it was at least since thousands of years.
Okay. So what is Lyra like today? Is there anything left of the original cities and civilizations?
Maybe not cities and civilization except ruins, but there are still planets that did not get blown up, yes. Some of which are still inhabited.
Did any of the refugees ever return to Lyra to build new cities, or were the planets just too damaged by the war to rebuild?
Likely the latter.
I see. Like I said to Metax, I know both sides blame each other for the start of the war in Lyra, but can you share with me the Empire's perspective on what started it?
Well, we approached the planetary reach with the decision to implement a new civilization to our empire. This is how we approach new civilization simply, yes.
Right.
This part, this incarnation cycle where we KALASK were very much a part of the empire, in a traditional sense, there were split off, etc. So this regard we're also employed to gather intelligence, so to speak. The original idea is simply to establish relations, trading relations, yes.
Okay.
And some were sent like an envoy to make first contact with people down there, being humanoids in this particular juncture of time. Similar to your current bloodline, you have some of the ancestry from various groups and when they're present. But obviously, all humanoids in this galaxy more or less have at least somewhat gotten genetically inflicted by this particular group that went out and infected, or as you're calling this, popularized or seeded, in other words, but from our perspective, it was infected. Now, we first arrived there. The idea was ships landing, no problem. We are stepping down from ships. We're establishing relations. Perhaps similar to your idea of what you have in one of your movie industries, your so-called Hollywood industry of first contact scenario, yes? Not much different than that. Happened on any word similar fashion. Obviously also the idea that the new civilization was supposed to be subjugated our imperial rule. And they obviously had their idea of having, well, we're quite sure where they're coming from. Obviously at some point they got hostile and they realized our intentions and they fired us, they attacked us.
Okay.
First difference in the belief system, they also acted very strange and erratic, and like you, they also got what you would say considered triggered, yes? By our energy.
Okay. I see.
Apparently we were infringing on some of their, what they're considering safe spaces, yes? In a way they didn't consider to be appropriate or weren't quite sure ourselves why they attacked us. But the idea simply we were subjugating a new world, we were infiltrating the government structure, yes, but with their idea we were doing a better job at governing their world. This is what we with all worlds. And obviously the idea was also to first establish relations with them, and then have something like the idea of having an overtake. However, we have since then perfected our method of the Emperor's now sending usually people into new worlds to first get them used to troops, and then they send in what you consider a false flag attack, because then people are more likely to side with us.
Okay.
Thereby you circumvent such problems. Because apparently new civilizations need an enemy. So you provide them with one. Instead of just going in and saying, now we are part of the Empire, because then they will fight us. Instead we come, hey, let's be friends. And then we send somebody else in to attack them, and then we help them defend themselves against the attacker. That's why they are more likely to be willing to be integrated in the Empire.
I got you. Now, Metax mentioned there was something of a trade deal that went wrong. Are you allowed to tell me what this was all about?
Certain substances that were being transferred, where one side apparently had different ideas than the other about what the exact. We were directly involved, KALASK, with this particular trade. However, from what we're aware from our record, so to speak, the idea was that one side sent something, expected something else in return, which they didn't get. Because some protocol were not used, and because protocol was null and void. Again, referring back perhaps to your cryptocurrency idea we were talking earlier, say a transaction didn't go through because something was not confirmed, yes? And the other side got mad, obviously, about not receiving what they bargained for, so to speak.
Okay.
Oversimplification.
So was the KALASK race involved at all in the Lyran War?
We're gathering intelligence, we shared, yes.
Okay.
And then when the war broke out, yes, we were also doing what you consider a person. What's the English term for this step? We're following, we're shadowing other battalions, so we're sometimes employed to protect carrier groups, battle groups.
Okay.
Like in Death Star, for example, something like this. We had ships around those things to defend them against attackers. To take out Luke, so to speak, yes?
Okay. Were the Zeta Greys or insectoids or the birdies involved in the Lyran War?
Birds, very much so, yes, but there is more of an overseeing function. As you're aware, most of the birds, particularly cats, did not give off direct use in warfare. As from what we're aware, neither of them are exactly on one side or the other. At least the particular warfare apparently considered to be something as planned, as they usually do. Insectoids were on our side and more largely. Later, some of them joined the Federation, where originally they were on our side. There were a great number of insectoid races within the Empire, bigger amounts than the Federations. Not quite as large discrepancies in the reptiles, but still much bigger in animals, for example, where we have little. So the races, from what we're aware of, did not exist at this point.
Okay. So what dimension did the war take place in?
From what we're aware of, it started in the third dimension.
So you're saying like it went into different dimensions later on?
Yes. Well, depends when you consider it ended, because we were following some of their groups that have caused us great destruction, drama, whatever. They fled and we followed them. And then over what you consider in time, there was the idea of the shifting dimensionality when you move beyond time, and therefore you get sort of scenarios in the Pleiades or Sirius or Orion. You consider the conflict of Pleiades and Sirius, for example, as a follow-up or part of the Lyra War, even though they were no longer in Lyra. And they are happening in other dimensionalities, or similar but different scenarios played out there, as the Pleiadian version had their idea that they need to become very peaceful, because they thought they could cut the connection off with us. As you're aware with your housewife esoteric scene, right? Some people try to avoid conflict by being super nice, and the bad person can't hurt me because I'm being too nice. Obviously, if you exclude a part of creation, you get sent this part of creation, so you get an opportunity to integrate it, yes? catching the spears in probability centers. That's why they worked until the Pleiades, because they hadn't figured it out correctly. Some fled to their galaxy, became what you consider Andromedans, yes? They said they got it all figured out, we certainly don't agree. But at least we didn't follow them further up there, so at least they were able to fend it off by something they managed to integrate everything down there above the conflict. Those evil reptiles are still warfaring, while they're all nice and peaceful now. They're still also just held out part of the puzzle. Lyrans went in different structures, different systems. They also developed what you consider different human races, different human coloration based on those planetary systems. They adapt to those particular environments, for example, right?
Okay.
Down Sirius there was some conflict as we did go there, and some also interacted there peacefully. Hybrids were created to the best of our ability, but that did not go very well.
So after there was the war in Lyra, which system did the war go to next? Was it the Pleiades, Sirius, or Orion?
Again, it shifted in dimension, so it shifted to a place where there is no time. So you could say some of those events happened before that, even though they were in linear timing after that.
Okay.
They went there simultaneously, and different groups of us followed them there simultaneously. What happened all our last in this particular linear idea of time was Orion.
Okay. I got you.
Not quite, but you will.